This program contains graphic violence and sexual situations. Viewer discretion is advised. For more than 30 years, a serial killer terrorizes Wichita, Kansas, stalking and killing young and old alike. Women, men, even children.
We were scared to death. And so he was controlling all of us.
Who was this murderer? Why is he targeting us? This doesn't happen in Wichita, Kansas.
The crime scenes reveal a depraved fascination with bondage, strangulation, and sexual perversion.
His entire essence was to create this sexual sadistic fantasy.
So the torture part was their knowledge that he had control over them, and he was going to exercise that control by taking their lives.
The killer taunts police with cryptic letters, deranged poems, and terrifying clues.
When he described how my sister died, it was tearing my chest open and ripping my heart out, kind of a feeling.
But this monster turns out to be something completely unexpected.
Dennis Rader was a guy who really hid in plain sight.
He is candid about his crimes, sharing details with reporters.
And I asked him, I said, how could you kill a child? And he very nonchalantly said, it was just collateral damage.
When he bound victims, he wanted to see their terror.
Meet Dennis Rader, AKA the BTK Killer.
BTK stood for bind, torture, and kill. And that's exactly what he did to his victims.
A seemingly ordinary church-going family man and respected member of his community.
He was the guy who lived down the street.
Until murder made him famous. From 1974 to 2005, the heartland of America was terrorized by Dennis Rader, better known as the BTK Killer. His murderous deeds cast a pall over Wichita, Kansas.
When BTK started his killing spree, the town changed. The people changed.
The product of dark fantasies, Rader's murders dominated news headlines for decades before his capture.
Stephen King based his novella, A Good Marriage, on the BTK Killer, and it was later made into a movie. Both the novella and the movie were about a woman who discovered that her husband was a serial killer.
Before his arrest, he enjoyed the infamy of his mysterious moniker, BTK, even going so far as writing to the local news stations about his killings.
KTV was this serial killer's favorite station, and he watched us all the time, and we knew he watched us because he would tell us through the communications that he would write to our station. He loved hearing his name on television, reading about it in the newspaper.
You know, he wanted that notoriety. There was something that drove him, knowing that people had him on and his murders on their brain and were thinking about him constantly.
After his arrest, Rader gave dramatic confessions as TV courtroom cameras recorded his accounts of the 10 gruesome murders he committed.
Is this something you were doing for your personal pleasure?
Sexual fantasy, sir.
He told me an interesting thing when I interviewed him. He said, you know, when I was a child in grade school, I was different from all the other young men. He said, and by the time I got to junior high, I was having dreams and thoughts that I knew no other young man was having. And he said, then I knew who I was and I knew what I was.
Born in 1945 in a small Kansas town, Dennis Rader is the first of 4 sons.
I baptize this child in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. His life shall be a blessed one.
According to Rader, his mother wasn't religious, but his father's family were devout Lutherans and they attended church every week.
Rader will later claim that certain experiences he had as a child shaped his behavior as an adult.
He claims that his mother had told him that she once dropped him on his head. He turned blue, which signals that he's losing oxygen. They did not get him any medical help. And his mother actually wondered after he was arrested whether that was a key incident that had affected his brain and his ability to make appropriate decisions.
According to Rader, his female teachers would humiliate him in the classroom.
What does it say? Jordan went to the carnival.
It's carnival, not carnival. Say it with me. Carnival.
Carnival.
Carnival. Carnival. My first graders can form these sentences. Concentrate.
I'm trying.
Well, try harder. Oh, your family should be so ashamed.
Women can be powerful in a way he doesn't particularly like. And it gets reinforced by female teachers who also make him feel off balance, and by girls that he's attracted to that he doesn't really quite know how to approach, so that he begins to form an idea about women that they might actually control him in ways he doesn't want, and so he needs to find ways to control them first.
Whatever made Dennis Rader make that left turn in life is still the secret that he holds, and I'm afraid we may never find out.
Rader will also state that he was exposed to sadomasochism, bondage, and domination of women through his father's crime magazines.
He discovered true crime or true detective magazines under the driver's seat of his father's car, and they had these shocking images of women bound by rope, staring at the camera. It appealed to him, the idea of keeping women under control. So he would see these covers of true crime magazines and would get aroused.
He allegedly begins to fantasize about stalking girls.
He would want to do what he called girl traps, keep them bound in some way. And it was the binding which suggested a great deal of control.
Over the years, he develops a fetish for women's lingerie. By 1966, the 21-year-old Rader, now enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, is habitually stealing women's underwear.
Rader developed an interest in cross-dressing in women's clothes. He developed this interest as a young boy when he touched his mother's and grandmother's silky undergarments. Later, he would steal lingerie from his victims.
After being discharged from the Air Force in 1970, Dennis Rader moves back to his hometown of Wichita, Kansas.
We're so glad you're home.
Thank you. I'm glad to be home. It's good to see you.
Friends and family purportedly have no idea about Rader's dark fantasies.
All right, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, bye.
Thanks.
Hey, Dennis.
There you are.
This is Paula Dietz.
Hi, Paula.
Hi.
I'm Dennis.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you. Well, I figured since you were back home and with a new girlfriend, I just thought you and Paula could get acquainted. That's all. You two should get to know one another.
Dennis Rader and Paula Dietz marry in 1971. Outwardly, Rader is living a normal existence. Beneath the surface, however, he lives a dark, secretive life and regularly fantasizes about women in bondage.
What Rader found most arousing was to bind himself with ropes or twines or something like that. Secretly, he would do that. He would bind himself or, go out and bury himself in sand, so he felt kind of trapped.
Rader begins working for the Cessna aircraft plant in Wichita, but slow sales lead to layoffs just 9 months later.
Dennis Rader said that losing his job at the Cessna plant caused him to feel lost and humiliated.
It's okay, sweetheart. Damn it. We'll be fine. My job pays enough.
What kind of man lets his wife take care of him?
But it's only temporary.
Whatever you say.
He wanted that Cessna job, and he lost that pretty quickly. He was laid off, and that really depressed him.
Over the years, Rader's fantasies become more depraved and elaborate. And in 1974, he decides to force his twisted urges upon others. He stalks neighborhoods looking for victims and creates what he will later call a hit kit.
The hit kit included duct tape, cotton clothesline, hemp rope, a knife to cut the phone lines, and gloves.
So he was testing the waters, in part because he was angry at how life was not working out for him.
Most disturbing of all, Rader will also claim he feels the presence of what he describes as a demon compelling him to kill.
He said that the demon was with him on all the killings. And that's really all we know about that. And that's a little frightening.
In 1974, Dennis Rader, who will soon become known as the BTK Killer, is trolling the streets of Wichita when he spots Julie Otero and her daughter, Josephine. He discovers where they live and stalks the family. One Tuesday morning, he decides to act.
January 15th, 1974 started out like every other day. Family would wake up, get ready for school. That day was a little bit different because my father was home. He had had an accident.
The three older children, Charlie, Carmen, and Danny, are about to leave for school.
The first thing that Dennis Rader does is cut the phone lines. This will become his pattern in the future, and it will strike fear in the residents of Wichita.
Outside the house, Dennis Rader is unaware that the father of the family, Joseph Otero, is home, recovering from an injury sustained in a car accident.
Hurry up so you can get to school on time.
Joey, the youngest Otero son, is also home.
Don't move.
Wait. Please don't hurt my children.
Nobody's gonna get hurt if you just do what I say. Sit down, sit down. Sit down now. Shut that dog up.
You can take whatever you want. We don't have much. There's our own
Shut the dog up. Shut the dog up before I kill it now.
Hey, hang on.
If you try anything, they're all dead.
All right, okay.
All right. To the back. I said to the back!
Rader orders the father, mother, and two children into a bedroom.
One of the things that Rader prides himself on is that he was very careful, and yet he did not know that all four were going to be home.
Rader then binds the hands of each Otero.
He then ties up the mother, ties up the little boy, and ties up Josephine.
Stay nice and quiet, nice and still. Everybody just stay calm.
Rader proceeds to strangle the family members, one at a time.
No! Please stop! No! Leave him alone! Stop! Let him go!
No, please stop!
He did not realize how much strength he would need to achieve this.
It's not like you put your hands on their neck and then they're gone. That doesn't happen.
Stop! Stop! No!
Leave us alone!
Mom!
Stop! Please!
Stop it! No! No!
Thinking the mother, Julie, is dead, Rader proceeds to strangle 11-year-old Josephine.
Stop! Stop! Sis! No!
He then strangles to death 9-year-old Joey.
He put bags over his head and a t-shirt to basically smother him.
To Rader's surprise, Julie regains consciousness and he strangles her again.
okay?
Suddenly, Josephine regains consciousness.
So nothing again was working out how he planned.
Rader lifts Josephine and carries her from the room.
He took Josephine to the basement.
And he told her, honey, you'll see your mama in heaven tonight. That's what he told us, he said.
She's an 11-year-old girl, and he hanged her from a pipe.
Rader sexually pleasures himself as Josephine dies from strangulation.
His semen is found on her leg, on her sock, and on the basement floor. They do preserve that, fortunately, but nobody's thinking about DNA. They don't even know what it is.
Hours later, Charlie, the oldest Otero son, comes home from school. Sister Carmen and brother Danny, who'd also been at school during the murders, are already in the house.
I opened up the door, went through. I said, is anybody home? And one of my siblings yelled out, Charlie, come quick. Mom and Dad are playing a bad trick on us.
15-year-old Charlie Otero discovers his mother and father's bodies.
Saw my mother on the bed, and I saw what kind of condition she was in, and it felt like somebody had ripped my chest open and pulled my heart out. My dad was lying on the floor. I remember he had a belt around his neck, pulled really tight, biting into his neck, and his tongue was half bit off. And I realized at that point there's nothing I could do for my family. They were dead. I just felt like my world had come to an end. I physically was aching at that point.
Police are called to the scene. They immediately search the house and find Josephine's body in the basement.
Did he rape her?
Worse. You know, he didn't have intercourse with any of these individuals. He was not sexually satisfied in that way. He was satisfied by the torture that he was able to claim, if you will, on these individuals.
He's very disturbed. I mean, this is his first murder. It's pretty unusual to have 4 people your first time out.
I got everything. No, I got everything. I got everything.
Directly after the Otero murder, he's not sure that he's going to get away with this. He doesn't know if he's been seen. He believes someone's going to come for him. This is too good to be true. When it doesn't happen, he starts to think, I want to do this again, but I'm going to be more careful. I'm not going to make mistakes this time.
Hey, you.
Hey, I thought you were gone.
I missed you.
Well, what's gotten into you? Everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. I'm just glad I'm lucky enough to come home to you every night.
As Wichita police search for the killer or killers of the Otero family, news quickly spreads about the grisly murders.
It was a horrible event that really stunned Wichita because, again, that's one of the things that happens on the East Coast. That doesn't happen in little Wichita, but it happened and scared the hell out of people.
Rader slips back into his other life as husband to his wife, Paula, and as youth leader at his Lutheran church.
The Bible teaches us that those who love do not hurt others. The monster that killed that family last month has no love in him. Therefore, we must pray for him. To pray that God have mercy on his soul, and to pray for those little ones left behind. Let us pray.
Rader also enrolls in Wichita State University. Ironically, he studies administration of justice attending classes at night.
He wanted control so badly over people that that's one way of being in control, being a police officer.
During the day, Rader stalks women as potential prey.
He was actually living the life he wanted to live, which was as a sadistic sexual killer.
21-year-old Kathryn Bright is a single woman living alone, prime prey for Rader.
He's going to look for a woman who lives alone so that he knows he can control just this one person. He has all these ideas now from mistakes he made at the Oteros of what he needs to do to pull this off and have a woman all to himself.
The BTK Killer, Dennis Rader, has killed 4 members of the Otero family and set off a wave of terror gripping Wichita, Kansas.
When he first started his murder spree, everyone was scared to death.
Police have some suspects, but none of them are Dennis Rader. Nobody suspects him, not even his wife. Rader made notes of the Otero family killings, and those would later be found by police. He also thought of himself as a bit of an artist and drew pictures of women being hanged.
Rader attends night classes at Wichita State University and continues to stalk women.
He had a whole set of index cards that he would keep in his vehicle. And he would see someone on the street, and he would make notes. He would take notes. It was his study. It was his occupation.
Dennis Rader's next victim is Kathryn Bright. She's 21 years old. She's attractive. She lives alone, and he's been stalking her for weeks. Rader would call his women victims projects, and his name for Kathryn was Project Lights Out.
Rader breaks into her house through a back door and waits for Kathryn to come home.
His approach is to cut the phone wires, get into the house, and be there to take her completely off guard. What he doesn't realize is she's going to come in with her brother. So he's now having to deal with 2 people again.
No, I wouldn't.
Don't move.
Okay, we don't want any trouble. Just take whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't want any trouble either. I need your money, your keys to your car. I gotta get to New York. I'm a wanted man.
This is all I ask.
Okay. Get in there.
We've given you everything we have. Please just leave.
I said get in there! Tie her up. If I have to ask you one more time, I swear to God.
So once again, he has underestimated all the things that can go wrong.
After tying up Kathryn's brother, Rader places his victims in separate rooms.
Hey, where are you taking her? Hey, let me shut up!
I swear to God, I'll kill you.
Then kill me.
Kevin, stop. It'll be okay. I'll be okay.
But it's not okay. Dennis Rader has to maintain control. And to do that, he has to kill both Kathryn and her brother.
All right.
Using her own scarf, Rader strangles Kathryn.
No, please, no. No, please.
Believing she is dead, Rader turns his attention to her brother, Kevin.
Kevin fights him and goes for the gun. At this point, Rader thinks it's over. This is where I'm gonna die.
Rader is able to regain control and shoots Kevin twice.
Help me! Somebody help me!
By separating his 2 victims, Rader has lost control of the situation.
Now, Rader is faced with not only did he not get the ultimate fantasy scene where he can completely control a woman, Now he's got to get this thing done in a hurry.
Kathryn Bright is stabbed repeatedly by Rader with an 8-inch hunting knife. Rader doesn't realize that Kathryn's brother is not dead, and Kevin is able to escape.
Many years later, Dennis Rader would tell investigators that the only reason why he used the knife was because he'd lost control of Kathryn Bright. She'd broken loose, and he had to get out of there quickly. So he didn't finish his fantasy of binding and torturing his victim.
Before leaving, Rader steals a pair of Kathryn's underwear. Kathryn Bright, victim number 5, dies from her injuries.
The stabbing of Kathryn Bright and the shooting of her brother initially throw off police who don't connect this crime scene with the Otero family murders because the method of killing was so different.
She crawled to the phone, but she didn't get the line because in the crime scene photos you can see the phone line just hanging there, and she tried to get to it.
Kathryn Bright's brother survives his injuries and gives police a description of his sister's killer.
Rader actually contemplated figuring out where Kevin lived and going and killing him to make sure to eliminate witnesses.
The Wichita Eagle and the local TV stations publicize the sketch, but nobody recognizes that it's Dennis Rader.
Failing to satisfy his sexual fantasy at the crime scene, Rader wears his victim's underwear and performs self-bondage for a photograph that police will find years later. More than 5 months later, in October of 1974, police questioned 3 men about the Otero murders. The men have a history of sexual offenses.
The Wichita Eagle ended up writing a story about that, and Dennis Rader saw it and immediately wanted to set the record straight. He wanted the glory for these murders.
Dennis Rader would claim that he didn't want to waste taxpayer money by sending the police on false leads, which is absurd.
Rader composes a letter anonymously claiming credit for the Otero murders. He puts the letter inside a book at a Wichita public library. Then he calls a journalist who tips off police. Wichita police detectives find the letter exactly where Rader said it would be.
He writes a letter about knowing what went on at the Oteros and being the only one who knows what went on at the Oteros, so he writes details about that.
Those 3 idiots you have in custody are just talking to get publicity. They know nothing at all. I did it by myself and with no one's help.
That was Dennis Rader's first communication with the media. And at that time, obviously, nobody knew that the killer was Dennis Rader.
The entire city is on alert, and people begin buying home security systems.
And here's the scary thing. Dennis Rader takes a job working for ADT Security Systems. He is installing home alarms.
How ironic that he installed security equipment for ADT. But when you think about it, if you were him, why wouldn't you? It'd be a perfect thing for a serial killer to do.
Living a double life, Rader and wife Paula have their first child, a boy, in 1975. It's been more than a year since his last killing.
We weren't looking at individuals who looked like Dennis Rader. We were looking for individuals who maybe lived alone, someone that might have been a previous sex offender. We were looking for the kinds of things that would alarm anyone.
3 years after the Otero family murders, in March of 1977, Rader attacks again, randomly.
Shirley Vian was not a targeted victim. He did not stalk her. He did not even know what he was going to face in this house. He had the whole, ruse cooked up for a different person who he had stalked who did not answer the door.
Dennis Rader pretends to be a detective. Shirley Vian's children, aged 8, 6, and 4, let Rader into the house.
This mother of 3 was killed on her bed while her children watched from the bathroom. The door had been partially tied shut with a rope.
The kids can see through a crack in the door what he's doing, so this is pretty traumatizing for them.
Months later, in December of 1977, Rader kills 25-year-old Nancy Fox. He will later refer to this project as the Fox Hunt.
The Nancy Fox incident, nothing went wrong, essentially, in that one, and she was his type. He stalked her, he knew where she worked, he knew her routines, and this is the one that, to this day, he thinks about as the one that worked out, the one that most closely matched his fantasies.
Rader is on an admitted high after he strangles Nancy Fox, so he makes a bold move. He reports his own crime to the police.
You will find a homicide at Suite 43 South Pershing, Nancy Fox.
He wanted to make sure that the homicide was discovered. Then he could get the joy of reliving whatever the media said about it.
By late 1977, the BTK Killer has killed 7 people in 4 separate incidents. And police still don't have his name on any suspect list.
Here's a guy who went to the movies with us, went to the grocery store with us, was with us in every sense of the word and part of our community.
As far as Nancy Fox, we still don't know what was used to strangle her, but we assume it was a belt or some other article of clothing.
Suspect took the murder weapon with him?
It appears so. Also, the nightgown near her head had semen stains on it.
Was she raped?
No.
So he masturbated in it?
Yes, sir.
And then the sick freak called in to report it.
A few months after the Nancy Fox murder, Dennis Rader decides to send a letter to television station KAKE TV. He writes that he is the killer of the Otero family, Kathryn Bright, Shirley Vian, and Nancy Fox.
I can still hear her pleading for mercy before the rope took hold. She's helpless. God, what a beautiful sexual relief. I don't lose any sleep over it.
Police now have confirmation that they are dealing with a serial killer.
The police chief came on our air and said, basically, ladies and gentlemen, we have a serial killer loose.
The Wichita police and the FBI announced that the killer has a new moniker, the BTK Killer. And BTK stands for the first letters of bind, torture, and kill.
It became an unpeaceful place. People could not go home and think everything's going to be the same. They would check to see if their phone lines were cut. They would go in maybe with another individual just to make sure everything was safe.
Police track down thousands of leads that take them nowhere. And then suddenly the killings stop. Dennis Rader slips back into his married life with Paula. They now have a son and a daughter. The family attends a Lutheran church where Rader has earned respect as a leader. While he continues to prowl and stalk, he doesn't act, not for over 7 years.
There's a mistaken notion that Dennis Rader simply stopped. He will say it's like a fisherman, it's his metaphor, a fisherman going out, and sometimes he comes back and just didn't catch anything. It isn't that he stopped going out fishing, he just wasn't successful.
In April of 1985, Rader started killing again.
Rader makes a bold move and kills 53-year-old Maureen Hedge, a neighbor. More than a year later, in September of 1986, Rader kills 28-year-old Vicki Wegerle. Then, over 4 years later, he murders 62-year-old Dolores Davis. Rader disposes of her underneath a local bridge and photographs her body before leaving. It will be years before police connect the last 3 murders to BTK.
In 1991, the BTK killings have officially been classified as cold cases. But that doesn't stop Wichita residents from wondering whatever happened to the BTK killer.
I thought he's either been incarcerated, he's dead, moved out of the country, something's happened to him. But instead, he was right here, watching us and apparently planning for the future.
In late 2003 and early 2004, as the 30th anniversary of the 1974 Otero murders approaches, the news media writes stories about the serial killer, still a mystery 3 decades later.
Come on, Dad.
No, you don't want a crooked angel, do you?
It's fine. Come on.
It's been 30 years since the infamous BTK Killer killed his first victims, 4 members of the Otero family. Although his brutal crime sent shockwaves throughout Wichita, his identity still remains a mystery to this day.
Can't believe they never caught him.
But first,
Hopefully somebody did him in. I know I would if I ever saw him.
Junior. Dennis, come on. Dinner's getting cold.
All right, everybody, gather in.
I think a lot of people look at the situation and say, how could they not have known? He was living with you. You knew him most intimately. You should have seen something happening. But he was so skilled in his trickery that his family literally had no clue.
In January of 2004, the Wichita Eagle newspaper runs a 30th anniversary story. In the article, the reporter mentions that a book is being written by a local attorney about the BTK murder cases.
BTK did not like that. He didn't want anyone else having control of his story. So he sends the newspaper the driver's license of one of his victims that we didn't even know it was one of his victims.
It's a photocopy of the driver's license of Vicki Wegerle and also 3 Polaroid photos of her bound and lying on the floor in different positions.
The envelope has a return address of a vacant building and the name Bill Thomas Kilman, whose initials are BTK. Until now, police had not connected the Wegerle murder to BTK.
A killer who had been silent for years had suddenly reemerged. Obviously, we're able to break the story, but it was huge news when Dennis Rader, when the BTK serial killer reemerged.
Over the next 11 months, Rader leaves clues to the murders randomly around town. Rader calls this his cat and mouse game with police and the media. One clue is a doll attached to a pipe. Rader leaves it for police in a breakfast cereal box. It symbolizes the murder of young Josephine Otero.
But the big break comes when Rader starts communicating with police through the classified ads in the Wichita Eagle. Indirectly, he asks them a very strange question.
Look at this.
Can you trace a floppy disk, Lieutenant Landwehr? Be honest. Sincerely, Rex. Is he serious?
What do you want to do?
Call up the paper. Have them run with Rex. It will be okay.
I'm on it.
In 2004 and early 2005, serial killer Dennis Rader seeks notoriety as the BTK Killer. He manipulates police and the media by leaving drawings, poems, and various clues.
That was the weird thing about this case is some serial killers, they just want to go on killing and they don't want any publicity. They want to lie low. This serial killer was as much addicted to the killing as he was to the publicity of the killing.
There's almost a sense that he's got a relationship with the media people, the local news station and the local newspaper. So now he's got this idea that he has a fan club.
Cake TV became part of the story because he had communicated with us all these years, because he liked us, and because we had cooperated with the Wichita Police Department and the FBI over this huge span of time. So now we were part of the story.
The biggest break occurs on February 16, 2005, when Wichita television station KSAS receives a floppy disk.
Rader was tired of making photocopies, and he wanted to put his documents on a floppy disk. But he had one worry, that police would be able to trace that. So through a newspaper ad, he asked whether police could trace a floppy disk. And they responded through another newspaper ad, no. As crazy as it sounds, Rader trusted the police.
Let's hope there's something on here.
I can't believe he took the bait.
In the disk's metadata, investigators find the name Christ Lutheran Church and a document that was marked as last modified by Dennis.
They Googled Christ Lutheran Church in Park City, and on the webpage, his face as president, chairman of the board of the church.
Police need more direct evidence to detain Rader. They get a warrant to test the DNA of a pap smear that Rader's daughter had taken at the Kansas State University Medical Clinic when she was a student.
So when we received the profile from the pap smear, we knew that the father of the individuals who had given the pap smear was the BTK killer.
The crime lab was able to match DNA from 3 different scenes: the Otero family home, the apartment of Nancy Fox, and the fingernail scrapings from Vicki Wegerle. This confirmed once and for all that Dennis Rader was the BTK killer.
All right.
Don't you move! Hands where I can see them! Step out of the vehicle! Get on the ground now! Get down now!
After his arrest, police search Rader's home and office. Among the incriminating evidence, they find pornographic materials, explicit drawings, and bondage paraphernalia. During police interrogations, Rader confesses to 10 murders, including 2 that police had not yet connected to BTK, the 1985 murder of Maureen Hedge and the 1991 murder of Dolores Davis.
It absolutely came as a shock to his family that he had committed 10 heinous murders.
People have asked me about his wife. How do you live with someone that long and not know? He insists that she did not know. I'm confident that she did not know, because that's what she's expressed.
Paula Rader is granted a speedy divorce after her husband's arrest. Before a judge and television cameras, Rader gives grisly details of each murder he committed.
It was stunning. The feeling that you got from him was, this was what I accomplished in my life, killing people. And here's how I did it. And it's like a painter describing a painting, and he was so proud of it.
Strangled Mrs. Otero, and she went out, or passed out. I thought she was dead, she passed out. Then I strangled Josephine.
And when he described how my sister died, that was really, all of it was really bad, really, really bad. It was tearing my chest open and ripping my heart out kind of a feeling.
In August of 2005, Dennis Rader is sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences.
When it all went down and they gave him the sentence, I walked out, relieved knowing that that man would never walk free another day.
Rader is incarcerated at the El Dorado Correctional Facility, north of Wichita. His family has not visited him since his arrest.
He's pretty much 24/7 in his cell. I think he gets an hour where he can go exercise, gets a shower once a week. He watches TV.
We don't know what it was that caused his life to make that left turn that turned him into a monster. And my hope is that before he dies, that his brain can somehow be analyzed by qualified people and tell us what that left turn in life was and why it occurred. Because until we know that, we haven't solved the case of Dennis Rader. That's still out there. The question of why did he do it?